When you create these actions, you can run them on a series of files, a batch of files, and Photoshop has some tools like the image processor, the batch command, and the droplet. So we're going to explore what we can do here. Here we go. Well, with Photoshop opened, I can go to my File menu and I can choose Scripts. And with Scripts, I have a feature for Image Processor. And the image processor allows me to take some files and save them to a different format. In fact, I could save a file to a JPEG, a PSD, a TIFF, or a combination of all three. You can also use the image processor if you have some camera raw files, a collection or a batch of them, and you want to process them with the same settings. Or you may have some files and you want to apply a color profile or a copyright metadata. We're going to use this to apply a TIFF file. And to make sure I select my folder, and I've gone ahead and done that already with the Actions folder here. And if I wanted to include subfolders, I could, but in this case, I just want to do the folders that are in that main level, and I'm going to save it in the same location. Now the good thing is the ones that I'm using are JPEG, so even if we were to save over them, they're still going to be different because they're saving as a TIFF. And I could run some extra information, including running an action here or adding some copyright information, but I'm just going to leave it as is. I could even save this information so that if I wanted to come back and reuse this at another time, I could. I'm going to go ahead and choose Run. And you can see how it's going through. I didn't have very many pictures in there, only a few, but imagine doing that when you had lots of pictures. It's going to be a great time saver. It created a folder for me here called TIFF. And all those files have been saved in that TIFF format. Fabulous. Incidentally, when you're in the bridge, you can actually run the image processor or the batch command as well as some other features in here. So there's some other ways to get into your Photoshop actions and automated features. Let's go back in here to Photoshop. And we saw Photoshop scripts. Well, here's Photoshop Automate. And from the Automate command, I can access the batch. And with the batch, I can choose a set and an action. Now this depends on what actions I have loaded in my Actions panel. So I have some different sets available, and then I have this action, this black and white color. And I need to choose a source. It could be a folder, or it could be some open files, or I could bring some stuff in on case-by-case basis. For this exercise, I'm going to use a folder. And I need to select where that folder is coming from, which I've already done here. If I wanted to include all subfolders, that's an option. A little tip and trick is that if you had folders from multiple sources, simply put a shortcut or an alias into that head folder, and the batch will run on the folder and anything that it can find through those shortcuts or aliases. For this particular one, I'm going to choose to not include the subfolders. If for some reason I had some other options, I could check the override open command, but I'm going to leave all this information the same. I think I will check the suppress color profile warnings, even though it won't affect my images. Sometimes you'll have some images with different color settings, and most of the times when you're running a batch process, you're not going to be too worried about that. And now I have to choose my destination. If I choose none, the files stay open. They don't actually save. They're just done, and I can preview them before I save them. Now this can be really a nice feature, a nice luxury. However, if you're running this on, let's say 10 files or 100 files, it could get kind of hard on your memory. If you save and close them, the files will be saved automatically. And if you chose to save them to a folder, then you have a little bit more options where you can do a save as command and give it a different name, even a different location. I'm going to choose save to folder, and I'm actually going to choose the exact same location, but instead of having it save over it, I'm going to give it some different choices. Now, by default, it might just replace it with document name and extension, but I can make some choices in here. There's lots of options. Or I could even go in and just put in my own thing, like black and white with a space, and you can start seeing this example here. And I could add my document name. If I could even choose some of the case options in here. I could even, if I want to, add a date and timestamp as well, and the extension. This override action save as command, in fact, we hover here, it'll give us a little tip, means that if we had some save as commands specified in the action itself, then it's going to override them, and it will actually just run it based on our settings for our batch instead. So that could be a good thing to set up in case you had that feature. I'm going to just leave that alone because this particular action doesn't save anything. And then for errors, it's going to stop for errors, or we could have it give us a report about what's happening. We'll go ahead and choose OK. We'll run the batch. And because I told it to save it, it's prompting me. Here's that BW balloons with the TIFF. And I'll just go ahead and choose Save. I'll just keep going there. And I'm just going through those default settings. Until all of them are done. I'm going to take a closer look here at the bridge and open that up, and I can see those files that were saved with that feature created. I also like the idea here of my automate to droplet. Droplet creates an icon that allows you to drag and drop items, so it's a little bit like having a batch that you can save. And again, I'm going to keep some of my same actions in here. I still have that folder selected, and I'm still using that black and white. And for the destination, in this case, I'll just choose none, so it's not going to actually save anything. It'll let me a chance to preview it. And I'll click on OK. And if I open this folder up, might need to refresh this here, but here's a droplet that I just created, and it acts as an icon. You can even put that on your desktop if you wanted. Makes it even simpler. But if I have a file in here that I want to apply, I'm just going to take this, close it, this country road here. I'm just going to drag it onto the droplet. And I can see in Photoshop, because it's opened up, that it applied that droplet, and then I could either save it or do something else to it before I saved it. In this case, I'll just close it. That's a really slick thing with that droplet. Now I'm going to go back to Automate, and I want to point out this contact sheet as well as a couple other features. The contact sheet's been around for a really long time, and in version CS5, for some reason, it was no longer in Photoshop. You had to use the bridge. And they put it back into Photoshop, so you can access it through Photoshop in this new version CS6. And the contact sheet allows you to take several images. So if I were to go ahead and choose that library again, that folder rather, there we go. And I can take those images and I can create a panoramic view. And how about, I think 5 by 6 will be fine. I can see the different increments, and I'll go ahead and choose OK. And give it a moment, and you can see it building the contact sheet right before your very eyes. Now, you can see it here in the layers. Now, even though it's building it here in the Photoshop, I think I actually prefer the bridge, because the bridge has a more, some more options. It's more visually intriguing when you're applying the contact sheet. Let's see if I can open up the bridge while this is still playing here. It might still pop open in a moment. But with the bridge, the trick is to change your workspace to the output workspace. And again, there could be a little bit of memory constraints because it's trying to run two things. The computer's trying to run a couple things at once here. But if I change my bridge to the output, I can access the contact sheet. Here's this PDF contact sheet. I really like that interface here. And I can also access a web gallery. So a couple of different features that are traditionally thought of as Photoshop Automate commands, but now you can access through the bridge. And you can get back there to the Photoshop. Here's that contact sheet that got built as well. So with all these great features, the image processor, the batch, the droplet, and some things like the contact sheet, you can now apply actions to a series or a batch or a collection of files.